citizen communication. And the first item on the agenda is the election of officers. So there are two officer positions. There's the chair and the vice chair. The chair runs the meetings, entertains motions, that sort of thing. And the vice chair takes that position in the absence of the chair. So I will call for nominations for chair. Anna?
I very proudly nominate Victor Toe for chair, please.
Any second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
All those in favor? All right. Victor, you are chair.
Oh, Victor.
Put into work.
Okay. And now that you're chair, I'll let you call for nomination of vice chair.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm now calling for nominations for vice chair. Do I have any nominations?
I can't help.
That's okay. Okay. Well, I'll actually nominate Anna because you're wonderful. Yeah, you fit. It's another hat you need to put on.
Didn't I just say don't ask me to do anything?
You can respectfully
you.
decline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I accept.
Can I second? I second.
Just because he's never absent.
All those in favor? All right.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, with that being said, now moving on to, let's see, should be item 6A, I believe, or approval. 4A, my apologies. So 4A, approval of December 12th meeting minutes. Let me see. Jennifer usually sends a copy of the minutes before each meeting. So if y'all have any, many of y'all are new, so you might not understand what's going on yet, but essentially after each of our meetings, Jennifer takes kind of a summary of everything that was discussed or actions that were taken in the meeting, and essentially the minutes are a review of it. And so with that being said, generally we, if we approve it, we can just move on. But if there's anything you would like to be included on the record, that is the time for you to speak up. So with that being said, are there any motions on the minutes?
I move for passage of and acceptance of the minutes, please.
Okay. Chair seconds that. May I get a show of hands for yes on the passage of minutes, last month's minutes?
I wasn't even here, but yes.
Okay. All right, ayes have it. Motion passes. All right, we're moving on to item 5A now, which is discuss and consider action on an outline for community conversations. That will be led by Brianna Higgins.
Right here.
Brianna or Brianna?
It's Brianna.
Okay, Brianna Higgins, assistant to the city manager. So with that being said, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Equity Commission. It's nice to see some familiar faces and new faces as well. We presented this at the last December meeting, but with new members, I'm going to act like I never presented it to you, and we're going to present it all over again. And we have at the end, I'll have some recommended action for the Equity Commission to take. So in front of you, you have a packet. It's the Equity Commission City of Pflugerville listening tours. This is a draft outline. The idea of the listening tours came from inspiration by the city of Plano. They've done something very similar where they went around different parts of their city and just listened to what their residents had to say. They had some very general questions that they asked their residents and gave them a lot of feedback for them to see insight in areas that might need improvement, in areas that they're doing great and they can just keep doing what they're doing in those specific departments. The outline consists of an example for an agenda. The idea is you have participants kind of fill out an anonymous demographic sheet. That way you can kind of get a feel of who's been at your sessions, age ranges, neighborhoods, things like that. So as you get feedback, you might be able to identify. For example, you could say that your 20-year-olds think that Pflugerville's hopping, and maybe your teenagers think Pflugerville needs some more activities for them, right? That's just an example of what you might find out. And it goes through an introduction, setting community rules, explaining what the listening tour is for and what that meeting's for, along with example questions. These questions were pulled from the City of Plano's questions. They were very general, fixed for Pflugerville as well. The idea is that while the questions may not be equity-centered, they don't specifically say what inequities you see in Pflugerville. They're more general. That idea is because not everyone understands inequality, equality, and sometimes conversations of equity might scare people away from coming to the table because they don't fully understand those conversations, or they might think the conversations are always negative. And so the idea is when you get those answers, that's when you might see those equity components come in. You may hear from a neighborhood that they're loving their parks, and you might hear from another neighborhood that they're not loving their parks. And that might be a key for where some inequalities are in the city. Yep, okay. So then you would wrap up, and then you would share what your next steps are. The next page shows you a listening tour timeline. This is where I'm going to share some action steps for the Equity Commission, but I kind of wanted to explain the timeline a little bit. You would have February and March to really plan it out, discuss where you want to see these happen, decide if you want to change the questions, decide if you want to change the agenda outline, and you would figure out the timing and locations. Now, we have them starting in April and ending in August. It is up to the commission to decide if you want to do 1 a month, 2 a month, if you want to do them at 8 a.m., at 5 p.m. What I suggest for the Equity Commission tonight is that you create a subcommittee of 2 members to finalize those dates and locations, to decide what time they'll be at and where they'll be at, reaching out to to the different nonprofits we have, working with staff to see if there are any city facilities, but really the Equity Commission guiding when those happen and where they happen, because it's recommended that this is your project. In September, staff would work with you to summarize those findings, summarize the comments that were collected, and help identify, where you'll see on the next pages, kind of those pillars come in. For the new commission members, the Equity Commission identified some key pillars of equity, and you can see those here. The idea is in those comments that you gather throughout these listening sessions, you will be able to organize them into the different pillars. You may find that maybe some pillars don't have as many comments as others. We really don't know what results you'll find because it's the first time the city has done anything like this. But then from there, as you wrap up those findings, you'll be able to see some action steps. Summarizing those comments again, looking at what pillars they fall in, and then identifying if there are any action steps that can be taken from there. I've been using parks as an example. Sorry, Shane, we love the parks, but you're just here and that's what I've been using. But you may find that, let's say, there's a lot of comments saying this one specific park is heavily used, but the equipment just isn't accessible for everybody, right? Then an action step recommended by the Equity Commission would be for the Parks Commission or the Parks team to look into that park and identify some ways to improve it. And so tonight, on the very last page, you see a facilitator guide. The idea is that this is facilitated by the Equity Commission, by Equity Commission members. And we've created a full guide for you to follow through with introductions, what to do during the session, and the end of the session, some tips and tricks, because facilitating can be scary, but we're here to help. That's what staff's here to do. And so overall, the listening tour goal is for you to tour the city, go throughout the city, and just listen to what residents have to say. Just hear their feedback and identify areas where we might be able to improve and areas that we're killing it and we can just keep going with what we're doing. And so tonight I recommend to the Equity Commission that you identify a subcommittee of 2 individuals to finalize dates, locations, and times. I also recommend that the committee commits to each commission member committing to inviting 2 people to each listening session. So Cindy, for April through August, you'd have to find 2 people for each meeting just to invite. Maybe you're at Walmart, maybe you're at a neighborhood event. I'm inviting them to attend. That's how you'll get some participants if you go out there and invite. And then lastly, I recommend that you adopt the listening tour as a program and project that the Equity Commission takes on and fulfills. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good.
Okay, since your last presentation, I've slipped since then, so I've forgotten some issues. So forgive me if you've already told us this, but when I've done other listening tours, we had participants write their answers so we could kind of scientifically sort and have evidence of those responses. I don't remember how we're going to collect these answers. Is it going to be videotaped?
No, so it won't be recorded. That's mainly so that the participants of the listening tour feel comfortable. If they are recorded, they may not give you their honest responses and answers. People act differently when the
Oh, yeah, that's
video's
right.
on.
I forgot about that part. Yeah.
The recommendation is that you would have your facilitator, but you'd also have a note taker there writing down what's said. If we hand out a sheet, you don't get that natural conversation. You know, if I say, I think this road needs a lot of repairs, Katrina might say, no, that road's actually great. I'd rather you fix this road, right? So having those natural conversations and instead having a note taker write down the feedback and the conversations that are happening.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I think one of the good ways to also go about this too is perhaps also contacting our local like neighborhood HOAs that are in the city. I think using people who are already kind of well elected to to represent their neighborhoods, it's a good way to not only encourage participation but also get a little bit more localized per neighborhood. So I think when we're starting to look at locations for us to have this listening tour, I think we should consider having some or visiting some HOAs, and that way we can directly talk to citizens about about some of their concerns throughout the city. So with that being said,
I have a question too. So I get your point about the wanting the extemporaneous conversation, and that makes sense to me. What I've also read about like facilitated sessions like this sometimes is that it may be worthwhile to have them respond in writing initially, not so much so that we can collect it for data collection purposes, but more so they have a chance to not be influenced or have the conversation anchored by the first person to speak up. So my question there is, I would imagine or would hope that would be up to if it's our project, that let's say we decide we want to use that tactic, could we get support from the city if we needed those questions printed out for that approach?
Yeah, it would. That could be a nice icebreaker to have the questions right before you jumped into the conversation. I wouldn't want to give them too far in advance to prevent.
Yeah, no, I meant like
But
once
like if
we're
you're right
started.
there, yeah, I could see that being a nice middle ground there.
any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a suggestion that instead of a subcommittee, that we have a few, or at least 2 work sessions to be more inclusive of our new members, and just come up with a better plan before we create a subcommittee.
Okay, I would push the timeline up a little bit, but yeah.
One of the things I heard her say was there are going to be some things they're going to shy away from. Why?
Why would people?
You know, because for some people, that is what their problem is. You know, for me, on the side of Pflugerville that I stay, I could fill out 2 sheets of this on just what our neighborhood is missing in the last 28 years. So, you know, I understand you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but when you talk about equity, sometimes you have to have those hard conversations, and that's what we keep getting away from, is having hard conversations to be able to understand where people have been and what their feelings are. Looking at me, you don't know what I've been through. But if I told you, you would be shocked, you know. So, you know, but we have to have these conversations to get it out there. And if we're talking equity, we're trying to make everything equitable for everybody. And right now we have a haves and have-not situation going on here in Pflugerville and also in the state legislature.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the questions, I was leaning more towards, I wouldn't want one of the questions you asked to the residents that, join in on the listening session, what inequities do you see in the city? Mainly because some people, that may not get them thinking of the issues that they're seeing in the city because their brain doesn't automatically jump to that conversation. So we have questions that are more like, what are some of the pressing needs of the community that we should address? That would get them thinking a little bit more about some of the issues that they see, rather than if we ask them what inequities do they see, they just may not get from point A to point B that you want them to get to.
Yeah.
But it is certainly, from listening to the city of Plano talk about their experiences, they've gotten a breadth of information from individuals that participated, that brought up, big concerns that the residents had that they hadn't heard before, as well as seeing areas where they needed to dig deeper and think about what their next listening tour might look like.
Yes, but I know, and I have friends in Plano, a whole different demographic. So, we're talking about an area of people with, a nice little bit of equity in that community as opposed to a place like Pflugerville. So they're going to have different issues as opposed to what some place like Pflugerville is going to have.
Yes.
So you can't go by what they are dealing with. You have to tailor your questions to what your community is going to be dealing with. And, we have, he was at the meeting last few weeks ago. We got enough things going on that it's going to be a nightmare for this community and for this city. So we have to try and address those kind of issues because for some of us, it affects us more than others. So that's just from my experience dealing with all this stuff for all these years. So.
Yeah, I think what Brianna is trying to do essentially is, whenever we bring our, our commission to the community to create kind of kind of more focused conversations, because if we just asked in general what, what equity is, it kind of, what is equity? Like, if you have a general person, what that is, they can give you a lot of different answers, and they can talk about, whole plethora of different things. And so I think the idea that Brianna is trying to reach is that we want to start getting actual, actual information from residents as opposed to just asking, oh, what do you see?
Yeah.
What's equity to you? Or what's wrong with the community?
To be quite honest with you, there's not a whole lot of people in the city that know this committee exists.
Exactly.
And so you have to explain to them just what we are doing, Until I took Pflugerville 101, I didn't know that it existed. I've been here since Pflugerville ended over there by Heatherwild, So you have to explain to these people, what the commission's about and what it's trying to do, so they will know. If you don't educate them, they will have no clue. And I think it's always important to educate, And we can't, if they don't know, we tell them. We explain to them what we're about and what we're trying to do, so they don't have any ideas counter to what we're trying to do, Because different people are going to have a different definition, but we as leaders need to explain to them, this is what we're about, this is what we're trying to do, and this is what we can accomplish, and this is what we can't, so that they know. We can't, there are some things we can't do, but if we explain to them right off the bat and let the city know that we exist, then we can get a better feel for what they really are looking for a need.
Okay. So would you have any specific suggestions for the format or how we could change the format to incorporate what you're saying?
I would basically try and get the word out. The biggest thing that I've seen in a lot of these things is there's no real way of getting the word out. You talked about homeowners association. My homeowners association has not sent out anything in the last 3.5 years. And the website they used to have is no longer working. So we have no idea what's going on with our homeowners association other than when they want their dues paid, you know? And it was different when I first moved here. So going to the homeowners association might work for some of them, but for mine, no. And I know half the people on the homeowners association, and I still don't know what's going on there.
So what I would suggest is, one, for each of the listening sessions, as I mentioned earlier, each of you finding someone to invite, 2 people to invite to the sessions. That'll start getting the word out just from, if everyone on the commission finds 2 people, that's like 10 people, and they might tell people, and that'll grow it. Additionally, the listening tour is another mechanism where we're hoping it does bring light to the Equity Commission. If you say the Equity Commission is hosting City of Pflugerville listening tour, please come out and join us. That's one method. As staff, we're able to share this information out through our flyer, as well as on social media, and where we put all of our other community engagement events as well to get the information out that the Equity Commission is hosting those tours. And so really, your first steps are saying, yes, we're taking this on as a project and making that motion tonight. Additionally, deciding as a subcommittee or additional work sessions, if you will, how you're going to establish dates, times, and locations, and then moving forward from there.
I have one other question. So this outline is an example, but in light of what Mr. Hill just said, there's nothing prohibiting us from introducing the commission as part of the agenda, is there? So we could very well introduce more about the mission of the Equity Commission, our pillars, as a lead-in to the questions.
Establishing the purpose of us being there, introducing ourselves, what we do, and the reason we're here is.
Yeah.
You
Okay,
can add
just
that
want
to
to
your
make sure, yeah.
And what I can say is I'll provide you the Word document version, so that way you can make your edits and comments and fill in where those timelines are.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to make a motion that we have a work session on February 27th.
On February 27th.
It's a Monday. We don't know about Monday.
Yeah, so exactly 2 weeks from now?
Yeah. Only because President's Day, people are going camping or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So motion,
Well, that's fine, but I know I'm out of the state. It's the 27th and the 28th.
Is
Okay.
this doing the work session? Is that in lieu of creating a subcommittee?
It might, definitely.
yeah, it could be up to the commission to decide. So there's
I'm sorry.
February 27th?
February
February 27th, 2 weeks from now.
It's on a Monday.
That's
Yeah.
fine. I will
Chair,
find
if
space.
I may, just for the sake of, we don't ever want our commissions to, we never want to waste y'all's time. So I want to be very explicit about what are we going to accomplish that day? How long is it? We bring quite a team to these as well, so I want to be very responsive to y'all's time. And what does that work session look like to y'all? When y'all say do a work session, what does that mean?
Spend more time working out the details.
Okay, so you want, because we film, it's a whole ordeal to do these, so we want to make sure
Have
that
to do that to work sessions too?
y'all have never done work sessions?
Yes,
so-
we have.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was
Oh.
before we were filming all of them though.
Okay, so now we're filming, so that is different. So I just want to make sure, because I think at first it was a subcommittee, but now we just want to make sure y'all are good with adding more meetings. I can keep
Well-
sending staff, but
Yeah.
it,
So, or an alternative too, we could create kind of a subcommittee of 2 people, and also including a third person, me as a chair, so I can keep in the loop of what's happening, of just trying to iron out exactly what, how the format's going to look. And then at the next, at the next meeting, we can start talking, approve the format and then start talking about maybe approving different locations that we're looking at. Would that be okay along the lines? As opposed to doing a work session, of
I
course.
can't make the 27th anyways, so.
Mhm.
What time?
Oh no, it would generally be around 6:30, but I'm just making a suggestion.
And maybe I should explain a little bit more on why the subcommittee for finalizing dates, times, and locations. That provides more opportunity for the subcommittee to work together to reach out to those community partners as well as staff to find locations and times and dates, and then going forward from there to bring those recommendations to the larger Equity Commission to approve them. So it gives you more time outside of work sessions and meetings to plan instead of only planning them right here when you're not having those community partners communicating back and forth with you.
And Mr. Chairman, just to let you know, also if y'all are setting, if you do work sessions, you would have to have quorum, or we would have to end the meeting. If you do subcommittees, I don't have to worry about Open Meetings Act on quorum.
Okay. Okay, and I actually do agree with Brianna in this instance where it might be a good idea to actually create a subcommission to do just that.
Subcommittee.
Or subcommittee, my apology. So, a subcommittee, talk about locations, start reaching out, and also if I think if the commission as a whole has ideas on how we can change or the format of this, or perhaps that's something. Are we allowed to forward that to the subcommittee, or that's something we have to only discuss in meetings, Jennifer?
Ask it one more
Like if
time.
we're trying, like if there are any suggestions on amending the format, if that's something that have to be subject to open meetings, or like do we have to talk about it in the next meeting, or is that something that
Yeah, it would have to go before
Okay.
the commission.
Okay, so I guess what would make sense is if we have any suggestions on any format changes, that we send that to Jennifer and we can discuss that at the next meeting. And then the subcommittee subcommittee,
Subcommittee.
just making sure I get my lingo right. The subcommittee that we create now can start reaching out and looking at locations so that we can start hosting this tour. Does that sound good?
Are we asking for volunteers?
Well, for now, let's deal with the motion. You proposed initial motion for a work session, so it seemed like we might not be going that way right now. So Bernard, do we have a second on the motion?
I don't think was it a motion?
Yeah,
You
it
made the
was. So
motion.
without a second, it's declined.
Okay. So with that being said, the chair opens up any motions on creating a subcommittee. I think if that's the correct way to go about it.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Claudia makes a motion to create a subcommittee for the listening session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Anna seconds, and Chair also seconds. All right, can I get a show of hands for aye? Okay, ayes have it. And so do we have any volunteers for the subcommission or
Subcommittee.
committee? Committee, yeah, sorry. I'm gonna keep tripping up on that. Subcommittees. And for this, again, I think we'll have 2 people, and I'll be for sure on there like an unofficial third person, so that I can keep up to what's going on. So, do you have any volunteers? Wait, Anna? Do we have any new members you want to
Jump in.
jump in?
Twisting Cindy's arm, but she doesn't want to.
Oh, I'll do
You
it.
can?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so
And
we
this is just, to clarify, this is just a subcommittee to come up with a more, solid plan. Yeah.
yeah, let's look at different possible locations.
And then start contacting these locations also before the next meeting.
Yes, and if anyone has any maybe ideas from either after the meeting in the next few weeks until our next meeting on either the format, that's something you can email to Jennifer and we can, or you could email to Jennifer and we will discuss it at the next meeting. Okay, so with that being said, we can now Are there any other motions left on item 5A? Okay, so with that being said, we're moving on now to item 6A, which is the discussion regarding Slice of Pflugerville event. I have Caitlin Neal, our Special Events Coordinator with Parks and Rec Department.
Caitlin had to leave. So my name's Shane Mize, I'm the Director of Parks and Rec, and I am going to do my best to fill in for her. Slice of Pflugerville is an event that actually was, the genesis of it was kind of formed at the dais during the budgetary process. The council members wanted to highlight how diverse our zip code was. It's one of the most diverse zip codes in the Austin metro area, and they wanted to have a cultural festival that celebrated the diversity of the community. And so we've been working diligently on it. It'll be April 29th, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. We're coming to y'all to update you on what we're doing. And if anything in this process really connects with you and you'd like to help us, this is a first-year event. We know second year, third year, fourth year events have more momentum. There's more structure in place. There are small things to make changes to. So right now, as a first-year event, we're trying to do put the big rocks in place. And anyone that along the way is interested in helping us, we would gladly take the help. So Jennifer can get you my email address and we can connect after the meeting. So Slice of Pflugerville, we understand, we wanted to highlight the diversity of our community, and we understand people interact with diverse cultures in a couple different ways, right? So sometimes it's performances, sometimes it's art, sometimes it's food, sometimes it's local community. We believe we're highlighting the 4 big ways that people interact with culture. The objective is to highlight the diverse community, have an event as unique as our name, provide more downtown programming and family events, offer a diverse downtown food competition, and create an event that people connect with and they want to participate in, but also maybe even, serve or volunteer in some capacity in the future as well. This is one of those events that we see people attending and saying, oh, we had someone reach out and say, I think it was that, we've seen a couple of y'all were here from the PF 101, and someone was saying, oh, I've got a Hungarian side of my family that wasn't represented at this event. Cool. So next year, let's do a Hungarian section, and someone can talk about the food, the culture of that maybe brought that person's family over here, right? Oh, going the wrong way. So one of the first things that kind of connected with us is we saw how unique every culture has a connection with color. Every culture uniquely connects with culture in their own, or color in their own way. So you see the umbrella display that's in Europe, or you see in the top right corner that European city. You see this Ballet Folklorico dress. You see the traditional mask of an African tribe, and you see the Native American warrior preparing right for battle. Right, obviously an interpretation of that, but every culture interacts with color in a very unique way, and it's not something that I think I was aware of before we started putting together a board and saying every culture has something, whether it's flag pride, right, whether it's Germany at the World Cup, or at another different event where they're proud of their flag, they're proud of their colors, they're proud of American pride, right? You see a lot of red, white, and blue when people talk about America. So that same thing happens across countries all across the globe. So one of the first things we want to do is make this a really colorful event, a fun event, and you can see that in the logo as well. The layout will be downtown. It'll have 2 stages. We're hoping to have 25 or 30 food vendors and then 40 cultural and community vendors. I wish Caitlin, as our special event coordinator, was here to highlight a little bit more about the event layout, but I believe that we're shutting down Pecan. I know that to be true, and we're going all the way down Main Street, all the way to, I believe, 3rd. And there'll be a section for the passport program, which we'll explain in a minute, and for the cultural vendor section. So as we talked about earlier, we've reached out. Huh?
You didn't mean Pecan. You meant access to Main from
Sorry.
Pecan.
Yeah, absolutely. See, call her back. call Caitlin over here. I don't care how sick she is. And so one of the things we're hoping for, as we talked about, that we start to see other local community groups, whether it's the African American community or the Asian American community, that says, hey, we want to be involved. We want our voice represented. We want to be able to speak. We want to perform. We want to highlight our food. So the performances so far on the big stage, they have the Grooves, they have Round Rock Ballet Folklorico, they have an infusion dance. The Highland Park Elementary School has a little Ballet Folklorico, and they're coming out to perform. The Texas Dragon Lion Dance, the Austin Powwow. It looks like there's an open spot that we're still seeking performance, and then a Selena, did I say that right? Selena Forever tribute group. Our small stage has a lot more space. We've got a couple of spots with the mariachi band, Spicy Loops, and the samba dancers, but we're hoping to have some poetry out there. We're hoping to maybe even have some educational discussions happening out there on that stage as well. So we're hoping to have performances going on throughout the day, and we're not really limited to this. We've actually started talking about having pop-up or surprise performances, right? So having a group just show up at 3 o'clock and start performing, and that being an event that all of a sudden is happening right in the middle of this, and people get to observe and watch. And so we really want to introduce people to how many diverse people we have in our community. Art installation, so we're going to have some public art, we're going to have the mural art. The bottom right corner is a group called Color Cartel. They are a group of street muralists that are doing a performance art, which will stay up for a while as well. So we're going to have live performances that turn into art. We're going to have commissioned art that we can take and put in the community later on. And then we're going to have a lot of different art vendors as well. So we're very excited about it. The passport program, this is definitely something we might need continued help with. So the idea is we are incentivizing participation from local restaurants. Where there are so many diverse restaurants in our community, from the Venezuelan restaurant to the Jamaican restaurant to the Italian food, the American barbecue. There's so many different restaurants, not just in Pflugerville city limits, but just in our ETJ and surrounding area. And we want to give all of them a chance to come out. And so we're incentivizing participation. We're going to have a passport contest. If they participate in the passport contest, they'll get money for supplies. We will pay their vendor fee. And they will be out there participating in our food contest. It'll be like a bite type event, something in some sort of sample cup. Their bite contest can be an appetizer, a main dish, or a dessert. And people will get a passport, right? Going back with the theme of traveling around and visiting everything, they'll get a passport, and inside it, it'll have all the logos of all the restaurants that are participating. And you'll pay $10 or $15 or whatever that fee is. And you'll be able to go sample every single restaurant that's participating in that program, and you'll be able to get a stamp on it. And at the end, you can vote for who you think had the best appetizer, best main dish, best dessert. Put it in an envelope. And at that same time, those vendors are still going to be serving their traditional foods, right? So you go to the Cuban place and you find out they have a Cuban pizza, and you're like, oh, I want to try that. I want to take that to the next step. I want to try the pastries or whatever they're selling. There's opportunities for that as well. So people can visit all these vendors without participating in the passport program, but the passport program is what we're incentivizing to try to get restaurants out there.
Sweet.
Cool.
So we've created shirts. We like to create shirts in Parks and Rec. So we've got an event shirt for sale. You can see it here. It'll be on a dark colored, tri-colored type shirt, and then we're going to have tie-dye take-home kits. So you can either buy the event shirt and wear it, or you can buy a white shirt. It'll come with a take-home kit, and you and your family or your kids can, make a mess at your house, not at our downtown area, and you can come back and wear it next year. And staff is going to be doing the tie-dye shirts before the event, so we'll be able to advertise those. You'll be able to see my terrible tie-dye if you come. And then we have cultural shirts as well that we've created at the rec center and at the library. Anyone that was in PF 101 got to snag one, and I'm sure people have seen them here as well if they weren't in some sort of swag bag. So we're continuing to celebrate all things Pflugerville.
Very cool.
Preliminary budget, some of this stuff is just preliminary, but we kind of want you to see that we're focusing on art, entertainment, and food, trying to make sure that the big rocks of that budget go into that. And just the other stuff is logistical, just the things to make events happen. And is there any questions?
Fantastic.
Awesome.
I did have a question.
If something connects with you, not now, even later, you're like, man, I know a family member's story. I know our ancestral history of how a whole population maybe navigated this area. We'd love to tell it. We'd love to have a booth. We'd love for people to sit out there. We'd love for people to interact with their neighbors in the community. And someone walk up and say, oh, the Cuban culture, how did it come to Central Texas, right? Or tell us more about the Cuban restaurant that your family works at, or whatever it is, right? So any and all those opportunities to be a part of this event in some capacity, please reach out and let us know. Jennifer, please give them my contact info. I'll forward it to Caitlin and the team. She's got a whole steering committee of folks volunteering. We've already picked up one PF 101 participant from last week that's wanting to just serve as well. And we really need people going out and talking to some of these restaurants. You know, with 30 or 40 restaurants, we're getting some restaurants that are trying to figure out if they're going to shut down for the day and just bring the whole operation out, or if they're going to skeleton crew both. And so we want to let the restaurants know we're here to help them in those scenarios as well. But we've sent out emails. We've started our cursory, but people in the community that are super interested in this program and super interested in seeing diversity highlighted and celebrated, those are champions for us. So if you're interested in that in any way, whether you're a decorator, you don't want to do the food, or you want to do something else, or you want to help us load in and out vendors, that day we'll need all the help we can get. So please reach out to Jennifer, and I'll get you in contact with however you help. And I appreciate the time. Sorry for any misspeakings. I did not realize I'd be speaking. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you. So I have one question too. So if you haven't already, have y'all contacted any of the multi-ethnic chambers across the greater Austin area?
Great question. So we have reached out to the Austin, or the Asian American of Travis County, the African American of Travis County, all the different ones that we found that we could search. Whether it's we were super excited. We have a Round Rock Turkish group that reached out to us and said they had heard about it from that email, and they want to make sure people understand the greatness that is Turkey and how that represents their heritage.
Rihanna went there today.
The Turkish Center? You went there?
I did.
I was pumped that I'd gotten an email and Brandon about that. So we, but yeah, we've reached out to everyone that we know that is Googleable. I think there's 30 or 40 of them. If you think there's one that maybe is fairly obscure, or you think there's a good chance we missed it, or you just want to know who we've reached out to, if you have a better contact, or maybe someone that would be more apt to help us, you know, once again, reach out to us and we'll say, hey, yeah, we reached out to the Turkish American Center and it was Brianna, and she said, get away, I found him first. So, you know, whoever you think that is, let us know.
Did you have any trouble specifically contacting any specific people, or I guess maybe that's something you could maybe provide us maybe a list of? But
any questions you have?
I guess, like for me personally, did you have any I guess trouble reaching the Asian chamber? Because I used to work for them.
Okay.
And so, you know, if you have any trouble with them, I still have some people that I can talk to on there.
I'm sure we can leverage your contacts. I'll be quite honest, I have not contacted anyone, so I haven't had any trouble in anything. I got a great staff, they're all working hard on it. I was just here to observe, and then Caitlin had to step out. So I haven't heard specifically we've had any trouble with one group, but with all those groups that we've reached out to, we're beholden to everyone's response time. Some are quick, some are 2 weeks later, some are a month later, and that doesn't mean they're slowing down. They may just have other things on their plate. So if there's a contact you think that could help us, please reach out, make the connection. I have a business card. I don't have all of them, although I might have enough. How many do we have here?
6.
Oh, I've got 4. Y'all could do like
Jennifer needs
4
to-
people go in, 1 person go out type of, here you go.
Can we take a photo of it?
Yeah.
Well, my email.
Yeah.
But any connections you could help with, we would appreciate. Even honestly, even the group of people that have been super responsive, if you know another person in that community, that's just a multiplier for us. That would benefit from us.
Great. One suggestion I have, just an idea that came up, perhaps like either in the next few future festivals, to have maybe a student from the community design a shirt for each, like a cultural shirt for each region
Oh,
that
cool.
you're discussing. Like for
A
example,
continent shirt?
yeah, like you know, it's still going to be slice of Pflugerville, but let's say it's Asian themed. You're going to have a student design an Asian themed region, and then Europe or European, Hungarian, so on and so forth. That's just something that came to mind.
Yeah, we're hoping, we reached out to try to engage the Youth Advisory Council. It's a really small group this year, and it felt overwhelming for them. We're hoping as that group regrows post-COVID, that we can engage the student. They have a project every year. We'd love to be their project every year from start to finish. Yes, ma'am.
I got used to having Deutschenfest in May every year. Has Deutschenfest changed to October now?
Yes, ma'am, it moved
So
October.
so that's why April is a good date for that? Because I
Yes,
was
ma'am.
old brain.
No, yeah.
Having conflict, it's like, oh,
Deutsche
yeah.
Fest originally the idea was pushed to October for COVID. We were still coming out of COVID, and then once we got there, we thought it's in line with some of your more traditional October events that
I
are
love
German themed.
Yeah.
And that late May event had such a bad weather history that we thought it's probably better to not.
April sounds good.
That's what we're
Yeah,
hoping.
it's before the Cinco de Mayo and all the other conflicts and stuff.
Yeah, Austin, you're always going to have something.
Outstanding,
You're always
man,
going to
how
be competing with somebody in
exciting.
Austin, but we think people will come.
Yeah. Good on you, man. Good on
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Nice.
Did y'all hear that? Please put
Good.
that on my,
We agree.
please put that on my review. Thank y'all for the time.
Oh, David has a comment or question.
Oh, yes, sir.
Just a comment. For many years, a lot of my friends did spoken word poetry performances at the Crown Street Festival, and this is coming up, according to what I see, a week before that.
Okay.
So it can almost get them ready
Yeah.
for that. There's a lot of performers here in the city of Pflugerville and the city and around the areas that, are looking for some way to get out there. And,
Yeah.
and I was looking at the schedule, it's for some of them, 10 minutes by the time they set up, that won't be a whole lot of time, so
Sure.
you might want to
Expand.
expand your time a little bit, depending on what it is, because if, when we did Pecan Street, we had 2 stages all day, and it was always crowded,
Yeah.
and, but also, I know a few musicians that, if they know about it, they may be interested in it, so.
I would love it. I think what's really cool about this event is this is an event that your leadership, we're excited about. It kind of just created itself on the dais. It's obviously staff's interpretation year one, right? But as we know, Deutsche Fest is in its 46th year. That's 47 iterations of what it was. Whatever it was year one, it's not that now. I can totally envision that a art teacher at the ISD may say, I want our kids to do a coloring contest next year, or, you know what I mean? Like, this will grow, as the community really starts to interact with it, takes it over and takes ownership of it. There's going to be a lot of really great presentations, and it's, it may grow to other areas or a larger event or double day, multiple days or whatever. And so there's a lot of growth in there before that happens, I think, but we're super excited to bring it to the community, see how the community interacts with it, and see what year 2 looks like, because year 2 may look nothing like year 1.
The only suggestion I would have is get the kids involved.
Yeah.
I'm 66.
Okay.
They are our future, and if we want something to last, we get the young kids, because they got the pulse of what's going on.
We're going to text them.
And that's they got all the stuff that I was best with.
They would never come to this meeting.
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't.
But if you want this stuff to really happen,
Yeah.
that's where you target it. The younger demographic, because the older demographic, people like me, it's like it's too hot out there. I ain't going out there. I don't feel like being out there. So it's a good idea, and I've been to Deutsche Fest, and it's just pray for good weather.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Shane, for coming by. I really really, really cool idea. Lookerville is the melting pot of melting pots, in my opinion. We're very, very diverse, and I think it's really cool what we're doing here. So, are there any other comments from the commission before we move forward?
Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, Shane. Okay, moving on to item 6B now. It is the discussion regarding the FM 685 corridor study. This FM 685 corridor study is for development.
Chair, you don't have to read the whole, that's the summary that got.
Okay. Okay, no worries. Everyone can read that on their own time. All right, so I have Emily Barron doing that. So without further ado, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission. Tonight we wanted to bring to you, we're on our road show for the FM 685 corridor study, and hopefully you participated online or in one of our open houses related to the study. The study looks at that 685 corridor, which is also known as Dessau south of Pecan. So the study goes from just south of Wells Branch to the 130 intersection of 685. This is a long-term goal for the city and long-term improvements for the corridor that were identified in our master transportation plan. So this is step number one. So tonight, Jake Gudekunst, he's with Kimley Horn, as well as Tom Benz with Freeze and Nichols. He's been our general engineering consultant on this project are here. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jake to walk you through the presentation.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you all for having me tonight. As Emily said, this is a long-range plan to really address needs for safety, congestion, and mobility along the corridor for the long term. For some of y'all, I'm going to go through a little bit of a project background, some of the engagement process that we went through with the community, which I'm sure you'll be interested to hear about, what we went through in terms of alternatives to get here, and the actual final preferred concept. And we have some videos at the end if y'all want to watch them. We did some 3D versions of what this could look like, so I'm excited to share that. As Emily mentioned, this was a project that was identified in the Transportation Master Plan, or also known as the TMP. And then after the completion of that long-range planning document in 2019, there was a bond from the voters where over 2/3 of residents recommended over $100 million in road projects, which included this study. One of the things that we like to do at the beginning of these processes is actually look at what is the purpose and need for improvements on the corridor. And there's a couple of categories we really looked at that were very important. One of those was improving mobility. As you'll see on the corridor today, it's pretty congested. I'm sure many of y'all spend a lot of time waiting to get through it. In addition, there was a lot of opportunities specifically on this corridor for improving connectivity for people walking and biking. There's a lot of gaps on it today, but there's some really awesome facilities that cross it, like the Heritage Loop Trail and several other trails in the area. And then lastly, there were some safety concerns along the corridor. We looked at some crash histories and tried to come up with improvements. And then lastly, something that's really unique about this corridor, as Emily mentioned, it's got two names. It's known as FM 685, and then south, it's known as Dessau. That's because there are lots of agencies that have hands on this corridor. For the area that's FM, that's TxDOT. South of that, that's Austin. And then when you pass Wells Branch, you start entering into Travis County. And then there's this other organization called Campo. They do regional planning for the area, for all the cities and counties within the Central Texas area around Austin. And so we actually included all of them as a technical committee to help review all the improvements throughout this process. Something else to kind of go through, the bond funded up to a certain point. It gets us all the way through this initial study to come up with a concept. There's this fancy thing called a schematic and an environmental phase where we actually look at impacts to properties and the environment as well as people along the corridor. That's what would be happening next, and that's a pretty lengthy process that goes through the National Environmental Protection Act, NEPA process that's required. And then we actually get into design, which is also known as plan specifications and estimates. Construction is not funded yet. It is a pretty sizable project, which I'll show you at the end in terms of how much it could cost to do some of these things. It could be phased, so some pieces may move forward and others may not. But the bond itself is intended to get us all the way through the place of being able to be competitive for things like federal funding. And when we go through federal funding, you have to go through a lengthy environmental process, which is what we're about to start in the next year. There's a lot of projects in the area being planned. When you look at the 2020 road bonds, as well as some other projects from previous bonds, like the Colorado Sand Gap on the east side of 130, over a third of the projects in the bond are actually within about a half mile to a mile of this corridor, including the corridor itself. So we know this is an important area, and there's actually a lot of investment to address things that are not just along the corridor itself, but off corridor. Things like Emmanuel Road, improving that over by the school. south of Pecan Street, extending Main Street from downtown over to 685 is a new connection, connecting Pfluger Farm up to 45 in the yellow, as well as some other improvements on the east side. There's a lot of improvements here. I did want to note on the map there's B, C, and D, you'll notice along the blue line, the corridor. Those were previous projects. The B was actually the improvements made at Pecan and 685 a few years ago. C and D are short-term bond improvements to improve things like turn lanes, pedestrian access at both Pflugerville Parkway and 130. And feel free to interrupt me if there's questions as we go. I know there's a lot of detail here. So public engagement summary. We did a hybrid approach to this process. You can still actually get to the website, or I can share that with you afterwards. There was an online version of this that ran from the beginning of the process back in May all the way through up to this January. We had interactive maps. The first phase, we actually asked for folks to give us comments or concerns in the area. So that map you see on there, we got several hundred comments. We got a lot of really good input from residents and people that use the corridor. And then we actually used those to try to help inform recommendations. And we presented those recommendations as well for feedback at the end of the process. And we also had a lot of in-person engagement. We had two specific open houses that were both actually next door to this room, the Latino room. And we had a good number of folks show up to both of those meetings. We did see more folks participate online than in person, which is what we've been seeing more and more. That was a trend that actually started before COVID happened and has just continued to move that direction. And we had a lot of advertising on social media and otherwise. And then we had a whole lot of extra meetings that I wanted to talk about. So we wanted to get out and be in the community and try to meet people where they're at. At the Deutschenfest, we had over 100 people stop by our booth. So we felt we got really good engagement there where we actually had options for improvements on the corridor at that time. We actually had another meeting here with folks to meet the project team as well as meetings with business stakeholders along the corridor, including the school district to understand where are their bus routes, where are they seeing challenges, issues for their operations, as well as some other walkthroughs along the corridor to talk to tenants. One of the things we find is when you make recommendations for improvements, the owner of a building isn't necessarily the end user, and so we wanted to make sure we try to really engage with folks who actually operate the businesses, in addition to those that actually are the landowners. So we wanted to cover all that. And then not on this slide, but wanted to mention too, there was actually specific budget set aside to outreach to underserved, connected populations, also known as environmental justice populations. So there was some additional paid promotional advertising for kind of what we call geofence areas of the city to try to get people to come out. And the website was available in dozens of languages. There was a Google Translate feature built into the website, and then all materials in person were in Spanish and English. So wanted to hit the most proficient languages. Okay. Any questions on that process? Okay. So we look at the alternatives. There were two major.
Yeah, go back to
yes.
what was the purpose of meeting with the Mountain Creek HOA?
So we reached out to a couple different HOAs and were able to get onto their HOA meeting. We reached out to Saxony and a few others in the fall. We were able to talk about the recommendations at that specific HOA meeting. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. There were a couple of different options that were looked at, more than these two that are shown. These were the top two that were looked at. One of them was the Super Street option, as it was called, to prioritize getting people through the area as quickly as possible. And the other was actually a lower speed urban boulevard concept. I'll give you a sneak peek and say that the second option is what we ended up with. But it was really focusing on a slower speed, access to adjacent residences and businesses, and then really improving multimodal travel along the corridor was kind of the main features of that. The one on the left is very technical, but basically what it does is it really tries to push people through and is more for kind of a regional traffic. Some of these corridors have been built in the Central Texas region, but many of them have been replaced by things like highways, and we wanted to make sure that we had something that prioritized local traffic and connectivity.
So you guys went with alternative 2?
Correct, and I'll go through that in a second.
So is that like the UPM version where all the pedestrians just cross any old way they want to?
No, that's just a concept of more of an urban area boulevard. I've got more detail coming, but that's called a pedestrian scramble. Is a very technical term for it.
A what?
Pedestrian scramble.
Scramble?
Scramble, where
That
everyone
sounds
scrambles.
very scientific.
That's where you can.
I like them.
Yeah, over by the University of Texas, they have a couple of them where you can do diagonals across the street.
Well, of course.
Oh, kind of like Shibuya in Japan? Yeah.
Yep, definitely. So,
Scrambles.
but truly the one on the right, and I'll go through some more details here. It came out on top. I'll explain why in a second here. They don't look dramatically different from just a profile view section of these. The main difference is that we actually have, this is the higher speed facility. The lanes get narrower and there's more space between the cars and the paths on the side and the urban street option. We've been working with TxDOT to get approval to use narrower lane widths, which helps reduce speed. We actually have gotten that in writing from them, so we're excited to move forward with narrower lanes, which usually translates to slower speeds, which will help out a lot. But both options did look at expanding it to a 6-lane from a 4-lane section, which is what the Transportation Master Plan calls for. And that's what both options had. And then in this urban boulevard concept, we had pedestrians and bikes on a path on both sides.
So this is a done deal?
We're not done yet. We still have to go through the environmental process and then eventually a full design.
How many seniors responded to that? Because I'll tell you what, there's a section like that in Austin. I think it's around 45th Street. Oh my God, is that scary? The lanes are so narrow, and it's like, I think somebody's gonna hit me when I drive through there.
Yeah,
It's like,
the city of Austin will actually go down to 10 feet, in some places 9 and 9.5 feet. This is 11, so it's.
you can spit in somebody's eye if you roll your window down.
My parents live down near 45th Street in Austin, so I've been down
Dude,
there.
I've
Yeah.
seen that in Houston.
this senior doesn't like that. It's like, no, don't make them more narrow. It's Texas.
Yes,
Everything's bigger in Texas.
I agree with her. I lived in Houston for 12 years, and 59 went, and they narrowed it down to where you were right up on
Scary.
people.
Scary.
And if you happen to turn your head a little bit, you might drift into somebody, you know? And so you have to be careful, because I'm gonna be honest with you. Most of these people down here don't know how to drive, as it is. And if you get them too close, you're gonna be asking for it with accidents, side swipes, and everything else,
Well,
so.
do you have
So I
any
thi-
statistics on accidents and stuff?
you
We
know.
do.
So, and Jake's talking about like the 11-foot lanes, and they are narrower. However, I think maybe a good comparison is if you think about a parking space to your example about 45th Street, they're like 9-foot lanes. That's just a hair wider than like a normal parking space, but this is 11 feet. So you've got
A
2
little
more
more
feet.
space.
So it feels like, yes,
Oh.
it's narrower,
Yeah.
but there's
I
still much more.
misunderstood. I thought you were going from 11 to 9.
No.
Yeah.
Today it's 12 feet and 15 feet to the outside
So
line.
it's a Costco parking area.
It is more like a
Yeah.
Costco parking
Sure.
area.
That's like
Maybe a little bit wider,
parking.
but
A
yeah.
little bit wider,
Yeah.
sure.
So, but yeah. So what's been found though is with the wider lanes you get higher speeds, but these are Pflugerville lanes, not Austin
Not
lanes.
lanes.
How about that?
Well, and like something has to give to make room for the pedestrians and the cyclists,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah.
And that was a main concern when we
That's
started this process, is that we are taking into consideration all modes of transportation, not just the vehicle. Because people get around in different ways, and so we wanted to make sure that we could fit all of this in this corridor safely and effectively. And so this urban boulevard concept is really reflective of getting those connections and people along the corridor.
The sidewalk, I see that right there, but in my experience with joggers and bikers, they are, especially bikers, they're gonna be on the street, not on the sidewalk. So you might wanna think about that, cause even when I rode my bike, I was always in the street, but we got now more bikers that, think that they're a car.
That's just
And so you gotta be very careful, cause, you get behind one of them and all of a sudden the traffic's backing up and everybody's mad and everything.
Mhm.
But, it's just something to think about, since you're trying to encourage them to be on the sidewalk, and depending on where you're at, it's illegal to ride a bike on the sidewalk.
Yeah, these are officially designated as what's called a shared use path. It's very similar to what you have like on Pflugerville Parkway running in this area. That is actually one of the national best practice now is actually to have people ride on wider paths than, so typical sidewalks are 5 or 6 feet wide, these are 10 to allow for passing. Basically what we've seen is when people ride on the street in higher speed or higher volume situations, that's where we have a lot of the bike fatalities and severe injuries. And so this is actually considered safest for the bikes to actually have them come off. We've heard the same thing in other communities I've worked with about if you're on your bike and people want to use that, then they may still use it. One of the functions that could actually happen is because we are trying to get the speed lowered to 35 or 40. We're still working through that with TxDOT. Is people may feel safer riding on the street, and by Texas law, if you're on a bike, you can technically ride in a lane. You're considered a vehicle, so they could. But
I'll tell you, just being here in Pflugerville, you could put 35 on there. That don't mean they're gonna drive 35.
so we have some additional strategies for that. We're actually looking at what's called synchronizing the lights, which there's some new lights proposed
Yeah.
to make it where you'll hit a red light if you go too fast.
Yeah.
So you can use strategies like that to actually help
I
people
like that.
try to spread the speed.
This could be very helpful around like school areas and stuff.
Yeah.
I first thought was like that Wells Branch by the HEB, when the kids
that's a
get out of
mess.
school there, it's like, it's,
I think about it because I've been hit by a car twice while on a bike.
I have two, so
So,
once, but yeah.
you know.
It's usually when
It's a
someone's
scary
turning
thing.
right, they don't see you. So,
Yeah.
Thank you for this is good.
pleasure. So I mentioned earlier about federal funding. I'll get to the price tag in a minute of what something like this could cost. But one of the things we did is when we went through the process of evaluating the roadway itself, and then I'll get into some intersections as well, we actually looked at the different types of categories of ranking that they use. So anywhere you see the little arrow symbol, that's something that we actually tried to line up well to get federal funding in the future. Because quite frankly, the cost of this would be a pretty heavy burden on the taxpayers of Pflugerville. And so looking for other funding sources is going to be really critical to implementing this project. One thing that's kind of an interesting takeaway that we like to share is, so we did something that looked at not just traffic on this roadway, but actual traffic in and around Pflugerville and the surrounding communities in a big model. And what we found is when we actually lowered the speeds on the street, it actually resulted in people using other facilities like 130 instead of 685, which actually helped with congestion, ironically, in the long term. The other thing we did is we actually looked at what Pflugerville would be like when the city builds out based on the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan. And so we did want to make sure that the solution worked for the long term, 20, 30 years out, not something that would work for 5 or 10 years. And what was interesting was finding that when you compared that super street option to this one, the volumes were actually lower because of the lower speed. People chose to drive on things like 130 instead of 685. So that was a pretty big takeaway for us, which also helps with safety when you have slower speeds and fewer cars. It wasn't actually even close when we compared the two alternatives using those federal criteria. The Urban Boulevard ranked out much better, especially when it comes back to our purposes of multimodal connectivity, safety, and congestion in that sense of lowering volumes. So for the preferred concepts, this is a smaller graphic. I wouldn't expect you to read the dimensions on there. We did mention the 11-foot lane widths. We are continuing to work with TxDOT on getting an official response on the final speed, but we're working towards 40. We originally had 35, but we're trying to get to 40 with TxDOT since they do have some say on 685. Something else that we wanted to look into, and you'll see it on the actual report, is opportunities for street art or visual treatments such as gateway treatments along the corridor. So one of the more specific ones we looked at was locations where people would come in at the potential new Main Street going through the downtown east development that's underway, having some sort of way of kind of visually acknowledging, hey, you're entering a downtown space coming off of this corridor. And then when I show you in a minute, we also looked at improvements as people transition from Pecan into downtown when it changes facility types from a big 6-lane to a 4-lane and then down to what goes through downtown, using some gateway treatments there as well to kind of help signal to people who are entering a new district or a new area of the city.
What's a gateway treatment?
It's either a overarching kind of sign over the roadway, or it can be sometimes kind of monuments or other types of landscaping treatments that kind of signify you're entering a new place. And then also we looked at some artistic crosswalks to try to help draw attention to people that might be crossing, specifically one at Typhoon, Texas over at Stonehill Town Center, that crossing there. So you'll see that in the video in a minute. I don't want to give away too much for you. There's a lot on here, and there's a lot of intersection improvements. I'll try to be specific on these. We looked at up to 6 to 8 alternatives for each of the intersections. This is where you experience a lot of the congestion and safety issues. We actually, at 130 in Coppermine, that's the one where we had 8 alternatives we looked at to try to improve the overpass there. What ended up happening from that was the best solution was to rebuild the bridge and put U-turn bridges on both sides. We have a lot of folks trying to go north from Stonehill, so they get stuck at the light there. And then we know as things develop along the corridor, like North Point, which is a development further to the south along the corridor, more people will want to use a U-turn from north to south as well. And then making sure we expanded the bridge to be big enough to handle that 30 years out. It only needed 5 lanes, but we went ahead and wanted to show it as 6 just to be safe, have an extra factor of safety, as we like to call it in engineering world, and was able to fit that in there. We actually looked at a concept as well that included a tunnel that would take you directly to the main lanes of 130. That one was fairly intensive in terms of both cost and feasibility, so that one was taken out, but the solution actually worked just as well as the tunnel option. So we did look at a lot of different things and other wacky solutions that I probably won't get into here. So that's the current concept there. At Town Center, this would allow for 2 left turn lanes into the development. We heard a lot of folks from the community talking about issues getting backed up there, as well as expanding the exit by the big sign to have 3 lanes out so people can turn right, left, or go across the Typhoon, Texas, and their property over there with some of the restaurants. Going further south, and I'll explain this on the next slide with a video. So Pflugerville Parkway itself, the green big triangles are opportunities for potential placemaking in between the creek and the roadway, which could be things like potential park type facilities or other installations in those corners, which would have to be worked out with property owners as well. But this one is called a continuous flow intersection, and it's different from the one that's at 685, and you'll see that in my next video side by side. But that was the best solution there. Yep.
Oh, no.
Okay.
But that intersection is 685 and Pflugerville Parkway?
Correct. Yes. Main Street was more of a traditional signal intersection, but that's where you see the little corner triangles with some blue boxes for gateways. That would get fleshed out much more in the next stages of the project. Pecan Street's the big one. So this one, we looked at a lot of different options here as well. And interestingly enough, it was a bridge of Pecan Street up and over 685 that performed the best. This one actually has I mentioned the arch over the road. That's the little blue box on the yellow area over there, on the red and yellow area of it. But this one performed the best. You'll get a much better image of that in the video as you kind of fly through and see that one. But the thought here was this actually helps a lot as a speed transition. So you're coming off the 6-lane piece coming from like Amazon to the east, coming into downtown. This would allow you to kind of go up and over narrow lanes and drop speed all at the same time into downtown.
And you avoid all the funky
turns.
That.
So we did look at doing an improved version of that, which is more similar to what we have at Pflugerville Parkway, but this was still the best performing concept. And then lastly, at Wells Branch, it's mostly some turn lane improvements. We didn't need to do anything fancy or innovative, as we call them, at that location. And then the last thing we wanted to highlight is there are 3 new traffic lights in the long-term 20 to 30-year time frame proposed at Oxford, Olympic, and Applewood. Oxford and Olympic would also kind of depend on connecting to the neighborhoods. On the west side, they don't connect across right now. Applewood is actually, we found out a couple weeks ago, literally from TxDOT, that is funded to put a traffic light at Applewood from a highway safety improvement program. So that's based on crash history at the location. That's been funded by the state. So,
in Applewood?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I go to get to HEB, because I don't like all the turns.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's into my wife's neighborhood. Whenever I turned in there when we were dating, I was like scared for my life.
Yeah. So that one's supposed to be for construction right now. It's late 2024, so we're about 18 months away.
So what about putting a traffic light at Heatherwild and oh God, I forgot. That's all right.
Black.
Which part?
No. It's over by my neighborhood because I'm off of Heatherwild and
North or south of 30?
So this study,
45.
it's just for
685 and
Yeah.
kind of
Okay.
nearby.
only
Leave it
6,
alone.
yeah, Heather Wild was, no intersections with Heather Wild were
Yeah.
considered in this study.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So how much of Wells Branch belongs to Pflugerville? Just up to the HEB?
No,
No, I didn't think
it
so.
actually goes in and out, Wells Branch goes in and out of Pflugerville jurisdiction, Travis County and City of Austin,
Yep.
as you transition through the corridor.
So 10th Street on
Yeah.
is Pflugerville?
10th Street on, and then another piece just west, but then it's primarily Travis County
Yeah.
through that area.
Yeah, so Travis County would have to take on connecting to 130, and kind of today gets you out to the park, the county park, but this did contemplate that also. They do have plans to make it an extra lane in each direction long-term as a 6-lane road, so.
It's a really loud street after 9 p.m. And it's like, I live on 4th Street, I mean, not far from here, and I can hear those cars, those mufflers, and it's like, oh my gosh. It's really loud, and I have triple pane windows.
Okay, so there's a little bit of noise here, but on the left, this is a continuous flow intersection in Cedar Park. On the right is the one if you're going south today in Pflugerville. So look at the right video first. On this one, this is where you experience that kind of interesting crossover and you're going on the left side of the road. That's what happens today. And then on the second pass through, I'll tell you to kind of look at how different that looks on the Cedar Park example, which is what we're proposing at Pflugerville Parkway. So we went out and drove these and they kind of line up. So if you're coming south in Cedar Park to the same kind of intersection, which is different, you come up to the intersection and you have your own little right turn lane. And then you kind of come over and you don't actually cross over the lanes until further down. So it's a much safer, just a different kind of configuration.
Is that kind of like the Heather's Crossing I-35?
Hester's Crossing and I-35? No, those intersections up at I-35, they wouldn't be like this. The only local example is in Cedar Park at Palmer and Whitestone. That's what was in the video.
Oh.
So it'd be more like that. And the reason that the current configuration is Pecan and 685 is the bridges couldn't be touched. And so we actually looked at what if we could rebuild the bridges and do it that way. And that bridge from Pecan Street worked better. But the Pflugerville Parkway, we looked at bridges as well. And this intersection, like the one in Cedar Park, worked best.
Sounds like it's going to take a long time to build, though.
It could. It's a long-term plan for that reason. Last couple of slides, and congestion, if you don't do much between now and then, everything's red, surprise, on the left. But we actually wanted to show that everything on the corridor actually operates acceptable. So anything that's in yellow and green is acceptable in terms of what's called a level of service. And so with the improvements, with the growth, 2042 is an estimated date. That's probably not when Pflugerville will completely build out, but we just threw a date up there. It does look at if all the land in the Pflugerville comp plan does build out in the future. I mentioned the importance of multimodal connections on this corridor. Anything in orange is new sidewalks or paths. There's a lot of gaps in the corridor, so anything you see in yellow doesn't exist today as far as a gap in sidewalk in a lot of spaces. And then the blue on there is actually existing connections that you can see there's a lot that kind of cross this corridor. So 2 stretches of this actually north of Pflugerville Parkway and between Split Oak or Old Austin, Hutto, and Pecan were the two of the highest ranking connections in the transportation master plan. So those would be fixed as part of this. And then we did try to make sure that the crossings of the corridor occurred at safe locations. So that was either maintaining the existing ones like the Heritage Loop that goes under the road, or having them cross at signals where they can actually push a button and get people to stop with a red light to cross the road, which would be much improved.
What do y'all do, back at Pflugerville Parkway and 685, is that a reroute from where it is now? Because it looks like y'all got it dipping and going out instead of going straight through underneath it.
You talking about at Pflugerville Parkway? It goes straight through like it does today, the 10-foot path that crosses at the light.
Yeah,
So-
that's Pflugerville Parkway. I spent a lot of time on that, and it's bad enough as it is. So, I'm just wondering if they're changing the direction of it. And by this, it looked like they're changing the direction of it.
No, that blue is the existing kind of curve of alignment of the road today, and where the path is. That's the existing path. So.
It doesn't dip that much.
It does, you just don't feel it.
And then the other thing is we did do a lot of looking at additional opportunities to connect into existing trails while also providing opportunities to stay on the roadway. So a lot of the stuff in white is all path connections where you could ride a bike or walk through a lot of these locations. I mentioned cost. It's a lot of money. So for comparison, the bond in 2020 was $101.7 million to do all the projects in that, including this study to get us through design. Given current dollars, that doesn't include inflation or utility relocations or right-of-way, it's going to be even more than that. It's 126.7 million. And just for context, for everybody's benefit, since 2017, the cost of transportation construction has doubled. Just to give you an idea, it has not been immune from inflation, although we hope that it does not continue at that pace, I think for everybody's sake, including our pocketbooks. The thing that's interesting about it, though, too, is that almost half of that is for the intersections, because they are very expensive to build, especially when you get into the bridges and the continuous flow intersections. They are not cheap. And especially the bridge over 130, rebuilding that's an expensive project. So bridges are 2 to 3 times as expensive as a normal roadway or more. And then one thing I did not mention, I forgot to say earlier, is it does include street lighting along the whole roadway. That's one of the things that's missing today and would actually help contribute a lot to safety. The benefits do outweigh the costs. So we do some pretty fun calculations. It's based on some stuff that folks at the Texas Transportation Institute, which is out of Texas A&M, they actually have some things like value of time, fuel savings, and other things to convert safety benefits, reduced collisions, reduced time waiting in traffic, and reduced fuel consumption, which outweighs that. It just is, it's still a big cost. I have the video. I don't know if I can play it from here. I think I can, maybe. Select on this one.
Let's try.
I can
What's
go
that,
to the computer and do
pecan
it.
and what?
Nope. Jennifer, do you mind pressing?
Just click on the button. This is the last slide. So this is online on the city's website, as well as ours, or the city's YouTube channel, should I say. But this is a 3-dimensional model of what it could look like. So this is the southern end of Dessau at Wells Branch. You kind of do a little fly around. This includes having additional left and right turn lanes and contemplates Wells Branch and Dessau Road both as 6-lane, 3 lanes facilities, 3 in each direction, going through this area. And then it will pick back up and start going along the corridor. So in this area, this would be potentially at Olympic, where you have the apartment complex that just got built. So having a new light there and connecting to the neighborhood to the west of the corridor, and continuing on with the paths and the lighting on both sides.
What street is this?
This one's Oxford. Yeah, it'll pop up in the center as you go.
But that's all.
That's all.
Oh, we're on
Dessau.
Dessau. We're on Dessau,
Yeah.
sorry. This is what Dessau could look like. We would like to put trees in the
That's
median
very nice.
in the future
Nice
as well.
boulevard.
And then this is actually going underneath Pecan. If Pecan were to go over, it kind of gives you a visual of how different that would look, coming through there and coming back out to the sunshine as you pass through. And this is where HEB is on the right. You saw the little fuel station.
It's more like 290.
This is what I mentioned earlier, is the continuous flow intersection at Pflugerville Parkway. It is different, but it does operate safely and efficiently based on what we were looking at for this area. You can see some little people walking on the paths as well as we go through it. We'll do a little spin around here. But this one's modeled to look more like the one.
That's gonna confuse a whole lot of people.
That is very confusing.
And
It's going to land back on 685, so now we're oriented back north-south and we're back on 685. So now we're headed north towards Stonehill.
And Typhoon. Yeah.
Okay.
Coming through here, there's a little crosswalk there with pool floaties on it. It'll maybe not be that, but I'm looking at through that. That gets you some left turn, extra left turn capacity going north, and then this is coming over to the widened bridge with U-turns at 130. This is all online, so feel free to watch as many times as you like. But this is the kind of 3D concept of what we've got so far. So.
And
Wow.
do you, if you haven't already, can we get a copy of this, your slides sent to each member of the commission, just in case you want to review it?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can do that.
Thank you for your work. That's a lot of work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Any other questions other than YouTube video suggestions?
not yet.
The downside of YouTube, right?
There we go. Questions?
Who's gonna be handling it? TxDOT's gonna be handling this? Construction?
That's still to be determined at this time. Some of it will depend on how the funding works out, but it would have to be some sort of joint situation if it's the entire corridor, because south of Pecan Street is the cities, and north there is some TxDOT shared ownership of that. So, and then anything involving the 130 bridge would definitely have to involve TxDOT. So, and then Pecan Street is actually also a TxDOT road going through downtown. So, anything at that intersection also has to include TxDOT.
I got friends over there.
All right.
That's exhausting.
Any other questions from anyone? Comments? Concerns?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming by. Okay. Now, with that being said, the last item is pretty much to just adjourn. May I have a motion to adjourn from anybody? Oh, I can just do that? Okay, then Chair adjourns meeting. Thank you, everybody.